Wedding planners, what's the biggest Bridezilla moment you've witnessed? Story 1. So I had this client book me for a day of services 2 weeks before the actual wedding. I regret taking it to this day. She had no transportation planned to take her home at the end of the night. I asked her repeatedly what her plan was, and she just told me she wouldn't drink and planned to drive to her honeymoon spot. She never told me where it was, even though I kept asking. Fast forward 2 weeks, a massive tornado just went through the DC, Virginia, and Maryland area the day before her wedding, and power lines and trees were blocking every entrance to the highway to her wedding in the boonies of Maryland. I got up early to deal with the issues at the venue, like no electricity on a 100-degree day. I got a call from her around 6 a.m. saying she realized she needed transportation now. Fine, I'll find it. One last question. Where is this mystery honeymoon spot? She said it was hours away in West Virginia. I called every DC and Maryland-based limo company and begged them to find someone to drive into Maryland countryside at 11 p.m. and then take them to West Virginia. Finally, someone relented and I called the bride to tell her the price. Complete meltdown. Well, guess what? You request that, at the last minute, you're gonna have to pay whatever they want to charge you. The wedding itself was a complete disaster. The bride hated her hair and makeup and made it very well known to me, even though she had personally booked the stylist. As it was 100 degrees and blazing July sun, the original unshaded area was going to be terrible for the ceremony. I suggested we move it for her comfort and the comfort of her guests to a beautiful area with a centuries-old tree. She refused, but as guests arrived, they did nothing but complain. I decided to say whatever and move the ceremony to make everyone happy. It was a 1-hour traditional Jewish ceremony, and in no good mind would I let people suffer in the sun. After the ceremony, I had to wait outside the bridal suite while the couple had a bedding ceremony, something I never want to witness again. The ceremony went way over, thus extending cocktail hour and shortening the reception. The bride freaked out that she missed out on dancing time because of it and blamed it on me. At the end of the night, during cleanup, the mother of the bride started throwing decor in her car rather than letting my team do the loadout. As soon as she left, I noticed my emergency kit was nowhere to be found. I called the mother of the bride and she claimed she never saw it, even though it was next to the decor we had started to pile up. The next week, I got a call from the venue saying they saw a car throw a bag out of their window onto the steps of the venue and then sped away. Alas, it was my bag, and I had to drive over 90 minutes to fetch it, even though the mother of the bride and the bride lived super close to me and had my address. To top it all off, I got a heat stroke, and my poor assistant had to drive us home at midnight. Wedding ceremony? Is that what I think it is? Are they serious? I have tons of Jewish friends, and I have never heard of that. Story 2. I have a Groomzilla. I'm not a planner, but I am the office manager and assistant for a photographer during weddings. I go along with her on wedding days to be an extra set of hands and help gather everyone for portraits. The bride and groom were doing a first look, which I highly recommend, before the ceremony. How that works is that the bride comes up behind the groom, taps him on the shoulder, he turns around to see her in all bridal, they smile and kiss, and they get couples, wedding parties, and family portraits out of the way before the ceremony, so you're free to spend more time enjoying your reception instead of ducking out to take pictures. It's great because you get a close picture of the groom's reaction to seeing his bride, which is harder to get in a church or ceremony. Everyone stands up when they see the bride, and if you miss the shot, there's no recreating that look on his face. Anyway, so they're doing their first look downtown, edited out for privacy, and the groom has been on a party bus with the groomsmen for a few hours while she's getting ready in the hotel. They're all hammered, like they couldn't focus their eyes when I went to grab the groom for the first look. I asked him to please set his beer down for the pictures and he rolled his eyes but complied. She comes up behind him, already trying not to cry and smiling as big as the sun. She taps him on the shoulder and he turns around, and instead of looking at her, his eyes immediately search for the beer which he set on a windowsill. He reaches around her, grabs the beer and takes a long drink while finally looking at her. He put the beer down, burped in her face and said, "You look nice," before spinning around and heading back to the bus. I followed after him as the photographer was standing there stunned, and I'm like, hey Mike, you still have a bunch of portraits to take before we get the guys off the bus. And just as he turned around to answer me, she threw her bouquet and hit him in the chest. He grabbed it, whipped it in the middle of a very busy street, and stormed onto the bus. She follows him, screaming. I follow behind her, but I can't get around her without stepping on the dress. Another hammered groomsman is coming back on the bus, trying to get around both of us, bumping me aside, stepping on her dress, ripping part of the train, and sending both of us stumbling backwards. He dodges the falling bride, I don't, and I kinda catch her and keep her mostly upright, but we both tumble off the bus. I can feel her dress ripping more in my hand as she's trying to right herself. The guys on the bus are all laughing hysterically, including the groom. I have tears in my eyes because I just landed on my tailbone and my palm is scraped from breaking my fall. All I'm thinking is, don't touch the dress, don't get blood on her dress, just get her standing up. Groom tells the bus driver through his laughter, just go, man, she can meet us at the church. I meet eyes with the bus driver and I just kinda shake my head no and the groom sees me. Forget her, she's not paying you, I am. You want a $100 tip? Drive. So the bus driver left, the bride is hysterical, I drove her to the church, they still got married an hour later. I drank myself silly when I got home that night. I just checked Facebook, still married 3 years later. Story 3. I was not a planner, but was going to be at a wedding as a bridesmaid. The bride-to-be took us, the maid of honor, another bridesmaid, and myself, out to pick out dresses. The bride's mother and the groom's mother also came at her insistence. We, the bridesmaids, arrive at the dress shop only to find that the bride, her mom, and the groom's mom had already picked out the dress she wanted us to wear for the wedding when they'd bought her wedding dress a few weeks prior. Okay, that's fine in theory, but we had been under the impression we'd get to pick our own dresses. Whatever, it's her wedding. But when we try the dresses on, we realize that they don't really look good on the two of us because we're all different frames and sizes. We come out and show the bride and two moms, and the moms are in agreement that this dress really doesn't work. The bride, however, is very upset that we don't all magically look great in the same dress. She starts making snide, subtle comments about our appearances. She started implying that we'd need to lose weight to look good in them and telling one of the other girls how she'd need a push-up bra to look normal. The moms ignore the bride's attitude and flag down an employee to help us find some alternatives. We're in a small city, so their selection isn't the best, but the employee finds at least half a dozen other dresses that come in the color the bride wants. We try them all on, but because we vary so much in body types, most of them don't look good on one or all of us. Strapless ones look bad on the girls, the long dresses don't fit right on the short ones, etc. The bride continues to make comments about our bodies. Finally, the last dress we try on is generic enough that it looks fine on all of us. The bride doesn't like it because it doesn't make us look sexy enough. To make matters worse, in her eyes, the dress has pockets. She absolutely does not want her bridesmaid to have pockets. And at this point, every single one of us is happy with this choice, except her. She reluctantly agrees to let us pick that dress, but is very clearly not happy. So then we went to pick out shoes. The bride tells us we will be wearing the same shoes as her, but in a different color. Weird, but again, we try not to argue with her. When we try them on, though, there is a snag in her plans. I have very small feet, technically a 3 in kids, though some size 5 shoes will fit. The heels she wants are sky high and strapless. When I put them on and try to walk, my feet keep slipping out. They're also open-toed, so I can't really stuff the front like I've done in the past. To top it all off, just standing in them to try them on, I find the front is absolutely killing my feet. I tell her this, and she watches me try to walk in them, only to have them flop off. Her mom asks if they come in a smaller size, but they're fancy, exotic dancer shoes. So, no, they obviously don't make them to fit kids. The bride's solution? Once you start to wear them, your feet will swell and they'll fit then, and then she just walks off. The bride's mom assures me that we'll figure out something and buys all of our dresses and shoes as condolences. I never got to know how that would have worked out though because the bride and groom simultaneously cheated on each other, so they called off the wedding. The bride didn't even have the nerve to tell me herself. I had to hear it from the maid of honor. We're no longer friends, and it's sad to me now that this wasn't even the reason why. I can't believe I let someone treat me and other people she called friends like that. Man, that is just not your average Bridezilla. She's like a crossover episode between Bridezillas and Keeping Up with the Karens. Is there even a word for that level of bridal mayhem? If you've got a clue, drop it in the comments, hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Share the knowledge, folks. Story 4. It was an outside ceremony at a golf course with an inside reception. About an hour to the ceremony, the skies went dark and storm clouds began rolling in. I tell my outdoor brides we need to call the wedding no later than 30 minutes in advance so we have time to move guests indoors. as well as any other items, flowers, etc. In this case, the bride had a beautiful indoor location that was easily used for both a ceremony and reception, which is why there was no tent. I suggest to the bride that she move her ceremony inside. She says no, she wants it outside. I show her the clouds. It's Seattle, she says. There are always clouds. Well, yeah, but these are storm clouds, and you have 200 people sitting outside on a golf course. But she won't budge. No amount of reasoning is helping. 20 minutes to the ceremony, it starts to get windy. Nothing big yet, but this is just another sign that wet weather is upon us. She still won't reconsider. Several guests are seated outside. Many hover inside the reception area because it's cold out now. I told her this, tell her about her last call, warn her about what happens if it rains during the ceremony. She still wants it outside. The ceremony begins. It starts to sprinkle. Bridesmaids are getting wet as they walk down the aisle. Shoes are sinking into the grass. Guests are looking worried. The bride walks down the aisle just as big wind gusts begin. Rain starts to fall in earnest. Guests try to use umbrellas, but it's just too gusty. We aren't even 5 minutes into the ceremony when the heavens suddenly open and it pours. Guests start screeching and start moving inside. The ceremony is still happening for the bride, but guests are bailing. Musicians grab their instruments and head inside. The bridal party continues to stand there like nothing is happening, much like the band on the Titanic. There are maybe 20 guests left. Everyone else is bailed. It is an open downpour. Anyone left is just soaked. The officiant is rushing now, though there aren't really anyone left to witness the vows. Before they got to the kiss, the lightning began, and at that point, they finally bailed. The bride and bridal party spent the reception looking like drowned rats. The bride was just ruined, runny makeup, hair smushed. She had rashes on her skin from being wet all night. Wet lace and heavy ball gowns are not easily worn wet. All the decor that was meant to move inside following the ceremony was ruined. Thousands of dollars on flowers and centerpieces were down the drain, literally. And in the end, hardly anyone witnessed the ceremony at all, and they didn't even get to finish. Bad bride. She apologized to me and said I was right. Shockingly enough, she didn't complain much about the rest of the evening. It was almost like dealing with two brides, which baffled me even more. It was like Jekyll and Hyde. Story 5. Not a wedding planner, and names have been changed. Sarah was horrible to her mother, Dora, during her whole wedding process. Dora took the terrible treatment like a champ, from Sarah having tantrums over the dress to Sarah wanting her mother to dye her hair the night before the wedding. Dora paid for over half of the wedding and tried to calm tensions between Sarah and suppliers. She did all this with the patience of a saint. After all, Sarah is her only daughter and the first of her kids to get married. Then my wedding day comes and I am marrying Sarah's brother. I wanted to get married, but my husband wanted a wedding, so we compromised and had a small wedding with only 10 people, including us. Sarah shows up late and is being a witch to my family, to our guests, and to Dora, her own mother. So finally, after 20 minutes of her making a spectacle of herself, Sarah then loudly starts complaining about how the professional photographer doesn't know what she's doing. Dora has had enough. She holds Sarah's hand softly and very loudly in front of all of our guests and family and says, in a sweet voice, "You are a bridezilla at your wedding. Do you also have to be a witch at your brother's wedding?" Sarah's face dropped. She left shortly after the ceremony and did not sign our wedding book. I later found out that she told my husband the day before our wedding not to marry me. She got divorced shortly after my wedding due to her being unfaithful. She was miserable with that man, and now she is a lot nicer, and I can genuinely say that I like her now. I feel she was awful because she was just not happy with her ex-husband and didn't want my husband to be as unhappy as her. She projected her feelings thinking that we were in the same situation. Story 6. Not a wedding planner, but a wedding guest. So it was my cousin's, the groom's, wedding, and he was marrying this very witchy girl whom no one, except his sister, liked. The witchy girl hated everything about everyone and liked to be vocal about those things. So halfway through the reception, I was super bored since I didn't want to be there, and I only went because my mother insisted. The place is very awkward, no one is dancing, and the bride is having a screaming contest with her dad outside. I couldn't understand what they were saying. I noticed a woman, very young, sitting at the bride's family table, holding a baby and talking to some guy. I didn't notice her before since the baby was very quiet during the entire ceremony, and they sat at the back. I recognized that woman as a bride's 17-year-old sister, who, by the way, was a teen mom, and the guy, I assume and later learned, is her boyfriend and baby daddy. Yes, they were still together. So the bride comes back, looks at her sister angrily, then marches her way to the groom's family, where she proceeds to talk about how her sister was stupid and irresponsible, getting pregnant at 15, had the baby at 16, and how her baby daddy was a complete drunk and useless moron. She's talking so loudly that her sister, the guy, and everyone else are hearing her. The music is very low. Sister starts crying quietly, hugging the baby, who was now anxious. The guy looks ready to pounce on the bride, and he hadn't touched a single glass of alcohol. The bride's father seems angry, and the bride's mother goes to the sister to try to comfort her. Then the bride talks about how her sister is stealing her thunder, making the day all about herself and her mistakes. The bride's father goes to talk to her again. I realize then what they were arguing about, and Guy goes to his girlfriend to comfort her as well. The bride leaves to calm herself, but everyone can hear her having a tantrum outside. Guy and sister say their goodbyes to her family and a few friends and go home, with sister still crying and Guy still comforting her. Later, it was learned that sister and Guy actually work when they are not at school to pay for the baby fees. The bride was just always jealous of sister because she was the baby and the favorite daughter. And now the bride and sister are no longer on speaking terms, but for other reasons. Man, she's more than just a Bridezilla. It seems like she's got a massive attitude problem that could rival Godzilla, and some serious jealousy issues to top it off. Maybe therapy could be her happily ever after. Story 7. I was hired to assist with makeup and dressing. I was 8 months pregnant and had to tie the mother's saree. So while I am tying it, the mother tells me I am doing it wrong and wants me to do it her way. I told her that she wouldn't be able to walk if I tied it like she was requesting. So she starts to get frustrated. I tie her saree the way she wants. This woman doesn't know how to tie a saree. She apparently doesn't wear them. So she comes out and starts screaming and yelling at the wedding planner that I don't know how to tie a saree and now she can't walk. She's in tears. So then the planner takes her away, calms her down, and ties her saree. This leaves me in the room with the other girls, hair and makeup, and the bride. So the bride turns to me and starts saying, "You ruined my wedding day. How dare you make my mother cry on this day? You're a horrible person and are ruining the most important day of my life." I couldn't help it, but I started to laugh. And I couldn't stop. It was so dramatic, and it was a saree. Nothing was ruined. It took 10 minutes to fix, and the mother wouldn't listen about how to put one on anyway. The wedding planner walks in, so the bride starts tripping out and screaming, "Get out, get out. I don't want to see your face. You ruined everything." She starts to cry. I laughed even harder and said, "You are in for a surprise of your life if you think a poorly tied saree is the worst thing in the world and you are using it as an excuse to mess your own day up." I turned to the planner and told her to pay me so I could go home and put my feet up. The wedding planner called me the next week to help with another wedding. I said no. Story 8. I'm not a wedding planner, but I'm a former clergyman. So let me start off by saying that I was a deacon, fully empowered to officiate weddings, but no one, in my experience, asked a deacon to do a wedding unless they are a family friend. So I was a little shocked and somewhat suspicious when I was approached by this couple. They wanted two things, me to officiate and the use of our church. They were only 2 weeks away and their first venue fell through. Alternatively, they would just like to rent the church and they would have a family friend officiate. Unless the family friend just happened to be clergy of the same denomination as us, and the latter wasn't an option. As I asked more questions, I became increasingly uncomfortable with the couple. Something was off. Finally, they came out with it. The couple had broken up after the invites had been sent, but the bride was not going to be deprived of her special day of being treated like a princess for some technicality, like the fact that she didn't have a groom. Deposits were already in place anyway, so they figured they'd throw the big wedding, have the reception, and then go their separate ways. I asked the groom why he would be participating in this farce. The father of the bride, in an effort to give his special princess her special day, was willing to give the groom the honeymoon tickets and hotel. So he basically got a vacation to show up and look sincere. The reason why the first venue dropped them was that they didn't want to stage a fake wedding. Neither do we. Story 9. It was my aunt Twyla's wedding renewal. She ordered makeup artists, hairdressers, and even a team to set up where the party would take place. The hairdressers and makeup artists specifically were her 4 sisters, 4 cousins, and an extra 3 cousins from her husband's side of the family. The only people who let the makeup artist and hairdresser fix them up hours before the renewal wedding were my mom, Jackie, my aunt's sister, me, my little sister, and my aunt herself. The other members wanted to do it all themselves for some reason. When we all arrived at the party, the other women who rejected the offer showed up with no makeup and nappy hair. My aunt stressed on the spot and blew up in their faces. Jackie, my mom, the makeup artist, and even the hairdresser got mad at the ones who rejected them. There was an hour left and these women weren't even ready. The makeup and hairdresser would have been doing it without them having to pay because it was all coming from my aunt's pocket, but no, they wanted to do it themselves. Although my aunt was a bridezilla, she had every right to be. Alright, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy those who have been to a ruined wedding. What happened? Story 4 will make you emotional. I'll see you in that video. Thanks for watching.